The following program is a high-definition production of Blue Ridge PBS.
An inside look into how news is covered in our region. From the Blue Ridge PBS High Definition Studio, this is Blue Ridge Week with Julie Newman.
Welcome to Blue Ridge Week. I'm Julie Newman. For this edition, we'll sit down with an award-winning journalist with more than 40 years in the business. And when I say business, I mean business. Dan Smith is the editor and co-founder of the Valley Business Front magazine. Hi, Dan. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for letting me, Julie.
Now, we said you've been in this business for 40 years. Tell me how you've spent that time.
I've been working an awful lot, but this thing started in 1964, right out of high school, when my career as a fry cook hit bottom, and my mother suggested that because I like to write so much, I go down to the local newspaper in Asheville and see if I could get a job there. And I went into the sports department. The copy boy had left the day before, and I was working that evening, $5 a night, and I couldn't even type. But
really?
About a year later, I was the sports editor of the afternoon paper there, and
I bet you learned how to type real fast.
I had learned how to type by then, yeah. But it was a really intensive training session. Sports is a great place to learn journalism. It's also a good place to learn how to write because the strictures are so much less there. You're allowed your voice in sports, and you're really not in news so much.
Right.
And I think that that intense training with an old platoon sergeant named Al Geramonti standing over me with that dang blue pen of his, me wanting to cry and being too macho too, but learning and learning and learning, and that doesn't happen anymore.
So how did you land here in the Roanoke Valley?
I came up here to go to work for the daily newspaper in 1971 as a sports writer. I was recruited and by them. Actually, didn't even come up here before I took the job. I just thought that's a step up, and took it. And,
I'll take it.
Yeah, exactly. Making I think $110 a week.
Okay, so stayed there for a while and climbed the ranks.
I was at the Times for about 10 years. Got fired. Went to the West Coast in Mexico for a while, bummed around, came back, got a job at a series of weekly newspapers, and just sort of got back into it and have never been really away from it. We went to work for a business publication, the Blue Ridge Business Journal, in its second month of operation in, I guess, 1988. And I was the second editor. The first one had a conflict with the publisher, and he lost the battle. So I came in for the second one and was there for 20 years. And Tom Field and I were there together in 2008, and the Times had pretty much taken over then and was doing some things that we didn't really want to do. We wanted to do different things, and so we decided to go out and do our own magazine, and the Front came out of that.
Thus, the Valley Business Front. But at that point, you had spent 20 years covering business and were really seeped in the businesses of this area.
It's funny, Julie, because when I took the job with the Business Journal, I didn't know anything about business. I didn't want to know anything about business. I had grown up in a newsroom where if you were writing a business story, it had really better be bad, or they're going to accuse you of selling out. Colleagues would say, you're shilling again. And so I came into it and found out that this is probably the most fascinating beat. It has the smartest people. It has the most ambitious people, the most aggressive people, and the most quotable people. And it's a great, fun beat. It's also a third of your life.
Right. Yeah, you spend 40 hours at least at work.
Exactly.
You spend another 40 sleeping.
Exactly.
You're right, it's a third of your life. So tell me about the magazine. How is this organized, and what do you find when you pick up the Valley Business Front?
We have a series of what we call fronts, which are our business segments. And every month in these financial, legal, wellness, technology industry, development, retail, and so forth, we have at least one feature story on every one of those segments. So there's always a variety of pieces in the magazine that are going to appeal, we hope, to the people who have an interest in business. We have a cover story that is exhaustive. Sometimes these cover stories run so long and are so in depth that we can't get them all in the magazine, and they go on the web. Half of them go on the website. We've done that recently. Typically, a cover story will have 30 sources.
Wow.
30
and who's
interviews.
doing the legwork for these 30 sources and these cover stories?
I do a lot of it. I work with the writers directly. I do a lot of the backgrounding. When an assignment comes out of our office, it's complete. It tells you who to talk to, what to ask, what we're looking for, where the story's going, what the intent of it is. And all of that comes from backgrounding the story initially. Well, the writer goes out and does the legwork, does the interviews, organizes and writers, and we work directly with them. You'll see that on about half of these I have shared bylines because I'm doing it too. I don't want to get far, I don't want to get away from that. I want to continue being in the middle of these things.
So you're really behind the content of what we read.
That's my half of it. Tom Field is the designer. That's why this thing looks the way it does.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
I think Tom is the best designer in Roanoke easily, and maybe in this end of the state. The design here is based on pretty much a standard European size. It's 6 by 10 inches, and it's very, very different, but it's easy to handle, and it slips right into a briefcase.
Yeah, and like you said, it's beautifully laid out. Just really well done. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Julie, we're a brand new publication. We don't have much money. I mean, that's just the way these things are.
Right.
But we have attracted writers with national reputations because they enjoy this. They like the freedom they're given to write and the things that they write about. People like Keith Farrell was the editor of Omni magazine. Omni's probably the best science magazine that's ever been. He writes for us for a small percentage of what he has written for other magazines. He's written 18 books. Wow. Rachel Garrity is one of the best writers in the country. She enjoys doing this. And I think that when you get people together who enjoy something and give them the freedom to do it and get out of their way and respect them, you get stuff that you don't even dream about. I mean, it's rich and it's deep, it's interesting, and they have a good time doing it. And so other things become less important.
Right.
It's a business lesson that I've seen acted over and over and over. It's a model that I just don't think is one that you shouldn't entertain.
Well, let's get to some of the meat of some of these issues. The one we were just looking at is your May 10th issue. And the cover says, "Please God, need a job." Please help, need a job, God bless. So let's go down that path. What are you feeling, in a sense, from our community in the Roanoke Valley about the job situation?
It's just like it is everywhere else. It's very, very, very difficult. We talked to a number of people who were out of jobs. Between the time we talked to them and we published, some of them got jobs. A couple of them got jobs and lost jobs in that 5 weeks. We find very often that highly qualified people are the ones who are suffering most because there's just not the money to replace them when they get lost, when they lose their jobs.
Right.
Technical people are generally working. The manufacturing jobs here, you can't make a generalized statement about it because some of these segments are doing very well and others are in the can. So when you see a job fair, you go in and you see everything from guys in huge T-shirts and tennis shoes and so forth to people
in a three-piece suit
in Brooks Brothers suits who
right.
have never been without a job before in their life, and their story is exactly the same. I can't find anything. I'm willing to do anything, and it's desperate. But then there's some success stories that just sort of set you back. One of the things that intrigues me is how many people have been enabled in following their bliss because they didn't have anywhere else to go. You know, they have created
a business or
exactly
founded
something they've been dreaming about for years, and all of a sudden they just don't have a choice. So what the heck? Let's just do it, and they find a level of success. You know, what is it? 80% of small businesses die in the first year, and I think I would bet you that the percentage is better with these people. I would just about bet you it is, because they're investing themselves so heavily in it.
Right.
But again, the job situation here is pretty much the same, I think, as it is just about everywhere else. It's these small stories that make it intriguing.
You know, interestingly too, the Roanoke Valley used to be associated so heavily with the railroad system, and that used to be the industry of the valley. There doesn't really seem to be a key niche industry of our area anymore.
Oh, it was the railroads. It was American Viscose with 5,000 workers, and all of a sudden one day it didn't open. You know, it just didn't open. The banks moved. They just moved. The hospitals spread out a little bit, consolidated. But what we have now, and the Chamber of Commerce released had a press release a few weeks ago about the diversity here being so broad that it had made our economy more appealing than almost anybody else's in the country. That we
because there's a little of everything. There's
exactly,
not a lot
and
of one thing.
We're not going to die because this business closes, the way we almost did with the railroad and American Viscose and some of these other things. We're going to hurt if a big one closes, but we've got other big ones. And Roanoke has traditionally been sort of a cradle for entrepreneurism, and it remains that way. There are little pockets of people here who want to help. There's not all that angel money, but for some reason you don't seem to need that here.
Right.
You get teachers, you get guides here. People are lined up at our front door all the time saying, you know, let me help you with that. It's free. It's their time, and I think that the entrepreneurs tend to flourish here more than they would in some other areas.
I think that's one of the things that makes this a great place to live.
I agree with
really
that.
do.
I agree with that. Yes.
So we have more people out of work. We have these new entrepreneurial businesses sprouting up. Where are we headed next?
I don't know. I just did a piece for the Roanoke Magazine's 35th anniversary. Richard Wells and I go all the way back to the Roanoke Times 35 years ago. He was a wire editor or something like that, and I was a kid sports writer. And we had both come up here from Asheville, but Richard's the publisher of the Roanoker. And so I did this piece for the 35th anniversary. And the piece I did was to project the next 25 years about where we're going to be. And I talked to about 20, 25 people to ask them. And nobody knows. Nobody really knows. I mean, Rupert Cutler used to be on city council, has us flying airplanes out of downtown, going straight up in the air, taking off. And there's more like that. And Rupert will tell you that that's exactly what's going to happen too. I don't see it, but Rupert's older than I am. He probably knows. But it's just very difficult to say. Technology, look where we were 25 years ago, just in terms of technology. So much of what we are right now has to do with what we're wearing on our belt.
Right.
And I mentioned to you a little while ago that I did my first text message a little while ago, and I think that's like my first dose of cocaine. I'm done, And
it'll hook you.
But it did. I did 4 more, and like bam, bam, bam. But it's so hard to say because so much has changed. There's a wonderful book called Printer's Devil about Mark Twain. It came out a couple of years ago. It's about Mark Twain, who was just an avid printer all his life. He loved the printing industry. And in the course of the book, the writer says that during Mark Twain's years, printing changed more than it ever had before or had since. Well, that guy can look at any 20-minute period in the last 2 years and see that printing has changed more than it did during Mark Twain's days, but everything else has too, and it's the technology. So where's the technology going? Even the people who are inventing the technology don't know.
It's amazing. It's staggering, the speed of technology. I wanted to talk a little bit about the issue that you debuted January of this year, talking about where all these people have gone after ITT Night Vision cut one of their major departments. It's really interesting. They had so many well-qualified people, but budget cuts are budget cuts. They cut them off, and there are so many success stories that have come out of this.
That's the one we call the Frat Pack from ITT. It was a story that that Allison Weaver just sort of fell over. She was doing a story on one of the guys who was one of these laid-offs who had just had a spectacular career. And his name's Ken Ferris, and he was one of the founders, as a matter of fact, of let me get back to that. Anyhow, Ken has founded a number of businesses, and he started talking to Allison about this and said, you ought to do a story on that. And she said, are the guys still around? He said, yeah, they're all around. They've all done things that are, he said, one of them just won a Nobel Prize. But what it pointed out, I think, as much as anything else, is that sometimes these large corporations have a quick trigger when a department is not responding toward their investment ideal. And so they just dump the department. You have these brilliant scientists working on it in a little building off Peters Creek Road, and they get jettisoned, and they're out in the workplace, and they start doing things. They start inventing things and building little businesses that become big businesses, that become mega businesses, that become Nobel Prizes. And there are a bunch of them. We found 25 of them.
I think
Well,
you
we
featured.
found 25, but there was something like 200 of them. And they're all over the place. They're all over the world. Allison chased one of them down to Singapore. I mean, they're all over the place. This is a good story for right now, though. It's a good story for a bad economy. It's a hopeful story about people who got whacked right mid-career. These very secure men and women who had great educations, that resumes that were incredible, and all of a sudden they go to work one day and work's not there. So what do? Not a one of them sat down and started bawling about it. They went out and started doing things, and they came up with these businesses and these ideas, and some of which, one guy became a restaurateur and founded a big national chain. But it wasn't all about fiber optics, which is what they were in at the time. Some of it was, most of it was not.
But it's amazing. Like you said, technology is where it's at because they've taken the technology that they were working with and spun it into all these various different fields.
Exactly. And, the inventions that have come out of these people are just incredible. And they're engineers. I adore engineers. They are very different from the rest of us. And they have this dry, self-deprecating sense of humor that just lays me out. And we got about 20 of them together for a photograph for this thing. And it was just a riot being there with these guys.
You in your business really have your finger on the pulse of the businesses in this area. How are they feeling in general? Is this an optimistic time? Are they saying, okay, the economy's down, but we're going to make it through? Or is there a sense of pessimism? We're never going to recover from this. What's your take?
I think a lot of it depends on who they are personally. What their personality tells them. I think upbeat people are going to be upbeat no matter what, and the people with the black cloud over their head are going to have that black cloud if if their profits are running 25%, they're going to worry about the other shoe dropping. Right. What I find is that there is generally an optimism. We have not been hit like many communities have.
That's so true.
Traditionally, the Roanoke Valley, the New River Valley, the Lynchburg area have been on the tail end of downturns. It starts late, and the recovery begins early. That's pretty much, it appears to me that that's the way this one seems to be working. I'm seeing, I was telling you earlier about the real estate section or cover that we're doing for August, and how residential real estate is not doing particularly well, but the commercial guys are so busy that they almost couldn't talk to us, and they're doing this with older buildings. Well, they're upbeat. and they're running their legs off. The residential guys are thinning out the ranks of agents. They're going to all kinds of gimmicks and marketing and things other than just sitting down and selling,
Right.
and reacting. And I think businesses in general are doing that. Some of them are looking at gimmicks instead of basics.
Well, I think it's great news that some of these commercial businesses are taking over older buildings as opposed to taking land and building new structures and letting the old ones go to waste. I mean, reusing and recycling our resources, I think, is
That
so
is smart
important.
on so many levels, Julie. This is not just about making money, but even if that's all you want to do, you can make more money doing this. You're rehabbing something old and spending a lot less money on something that's probably already built better than you're going to build it anyway.
It's more structurally
Exactly.
sound.
It's a better building to start with. You don't have to do as much with it. I get a little bit annoyed with the LEED certification because LEED certification gives you more points for putting a bike rack in the basement than for using an old building. And
Really?
that's crazy. You don't get any credit for using an old building, and that's nuts. The
Yeah.
thing ought to start by giving you a maximum number of points for the old building. And these guys are doing these old buildings, and they're filling them up. And if they're not filling them up with businesses, they're doing like Ed Walker does, and they're filling them up with residents. And Ed always
And
says,
that's really the best combination anyway. The
Exactly.
best business model is if you can have a downtown or a center that mixes residential and commercial.
Ed says, I want a building with the lights on all the time. And that's what he's developing. You could go down and create these gentrified areas. He's mixing within his own buildings $450 rents with $1,800 rents.
And that's working.
It's working very well because you get such an admix of people with various interests that it supports all the businesses in that area. It creates community, and over in one of his buildings, it's having a slop-over effect into Old Southwest, one of our oldest neighborhoods and one of our most stable neighborhoods. It's doing this with it.
Well, speaking of the environment and rehabbing old businesses, I want to talk about your April issue that was never actually a tangible issue, completely online. Tell me about that.
That was Tom's idea. Tom's a libertarian, and I'm a socialist, and we meet in the middle every once in a while. But both of us are environmentalists. I think anybody would tell you that. And he said, we're going to do this environmental issue, so let's just be environmental. And I said, what do you mean? He said, let's don't print it. And I said, the advertisers will shoot us. He said, I bet they won't. Bet they won't.
What was the response?
We didn't lose anybody. We picked up a number of people. We had one law firm that was tentative about it and ultimately came in. But
And then, of course, the next month you went right back.
we went right back.
publishing.
We're printing again. But the rumor was that we had gone all online. There were a couple of benefits to that, Julie. All of us are going to be online ultimately. I mean, that's just the way this thing is working. We're going to have to be. You're not going to have this. But it gave us an indication of who's not there yet. Who among our readers is not reading it? And this goes across lines. This isn't just us. I would say this is probably most publications right now. If you have a good, strong online presence, it's going to help your magazine. And they complement each other right now, but they're sliding toward online. That's building up more and more daily. I think newspapers, I read a piece in Adweek the other day that newspapers don't quite understand what they have. They have a third of the people who use the internet are going to their sites, but their advertising rates are so high that people won't advertise there.
Right.
And but all of that has to adjust. People are complaining about us losing news magazines and newspapers, and we're losing journalism. We're not losing journalism. We're
But
losing
we're
a delivery
losing
system.
The ability to, like you say, tuck it in your briefcase or
Yep.
take it to the gym and put it on the treadmill. There's something to me about being able to hold it and turn the pages and read it, as opposed to clicking and scrolling and continuing to stare at my computer screen like I have all day.
This is so funny that I'll be 64 next month, and you're what, late 20s, and
Well, thank you. That was kind.
well, anyhow, You're making my argument, and I'm making yours. But the argument here is the same one that the guy who loved the smell of horses in front of his wagon was making when a car went by and smoked him out. I'm not going to give up that horse. I love brushing that horse. I love the feel and I love to hear him whinny and everything else. And this thing over here is just noisy. But it's we're going to get there.
Yeah.
Not fast. Don't worry about that. You're going to have your magazines, and I suspect we're always going to have books.
Well, Dan, I've enjoyed talking to you. Do you have any final thoughts, anything else you wanted to add or tell us about before we wrap up today?
I don't know. I talk too much, and I do hope some of this made sense. This has been, if I had been able to go sit down and talk with God before I was born and say, God, this is what I want to do, and here's how I want to do it, it would have been laid out pretty much as it was. It has not been always easy. It's not always been successful. Most of it has been unsuccessful. Most of it's been very difficult, some of it painful. But it's just been a heck of a ride. And,
not everyone can say that, looking back, that they would have done it just as they did it. That's quite an accomplishment.
Well, it's a great place to be, and writing is just such a gift to have as part of your life.
Okay, Dan Smith, editor of the Valley Business Front. Thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you, Julie. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
From all of us here at Blue Ridge PBS, thank you for joining us for Blue Ridge Week.